The spaceport of Ziffer 9 was alive with sound and color, a bustling hub where starships of every shape and size docked and departed. Alien merchants shouted their wares in strange melodic tones, while travelers from countless worlds pushed past each other carrying crates, luggage, and sometimes even small creatures. Humans were rare here. Their presence drew curious stares, whispers, and sometimes mockery. Kyle Ryden moved through the crowd, his steps measured and calm. He wore a simple gray tunic, slightly worn at the edges, and his dark eyes scanned the area with quiet alertness. He carried nothing but a small bag, slung over his shoulder, containing his personal items and a few mementos from a life long ago. To most, he was an ordinary man, just another human in a galaxy that preferred to underestimate them. Kale's destination was a small tavern tucked into the station's lower sectors, a place that saw few travelers but was safe from the constant chaos of the main concourse. Its sign, glowing softly in green letters, read, "The Rusted Star." Inside, the air was thick with the scent of brewed alien beverages, oil from machinery, and the faint tang of metal. Patrons leaned over tables talking in low voices, while the bar at the far end glimmered with bottles of liquids in every imaginable color. Kale moved behind the bar with practiced ease. He wiped a glass with a clean rag, placing it on a shelf just above the counter. The tavern had a few regular patrons, mostly merchants and workers from the station, who greeted him with quiet nods. Kale responded with a small, polite smile. To them, he was more than a bartender. He was a presence of calm in a chaotic world. The door burst open with a loud clang, and the room fell silent. 3 alien guards strode in, their armor clanking, eyes scanning the room like predators. Their skin was a deep shade of crimson, and their heads were crowned with ridges that glimmered under the dim lights. They were massive, easily twice the size of an average human, and they carried themselves with the confidence of those used to command and fear. One of the guards, taller than the others, pointed at Kale. "Well, well," he said in a harsh, guttural voice, "what do we have here? A human bartender? You look smaller than I imagined." The other 2 guards laughed, a deep, vibrating sound that made some of the patrons flinch. They leaned on the bar, knocking over a bottle accidentally but paying no attention as it shattered on the floor. Kyle did not flinch. He continued cleaning another glass, his movements calm, controlled. "You should be careful," the tall guard said, stepping closer. "On this station, humans are weak, easy to push around." Kale's eyes lifted slowly to meet his. There was no fear there, only a quiet, sharp focus. "I'm here to serve drinks," he said, his voice steady. "Not to start trouble." The guard laughed again. "Serve drinks? You should be serving orders to me, human." He waved a clawed hand toward Kale. "Maybe even a bow for good measure." Some patrons shifted nervously in their seats. None spoke up. No one dared to challenge the guards. Kyle, however, did not react beyond a slight tightening of his jaw. There was a stillness about him, a weight in the air that even the aliens did not notice at first. "You heard him," one of the smaller guards said, sneering. "Bow." Kyle leaned slightly over the counter, placing the glass carefully on the shelf. His movements were deliberate, slow, and almost hypnotic. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not need one. His presence alone commanded attention. The tallest guard laughed, stepping closer, invading Kale's space. "Or are you too scared, little human? You don't look like much of a fighter." A small smirk touched Kale's lips, almost imperceptible. "Scared," he said softly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply don't waste energy on those who can't see the storm before it arrives." The words were quiet, almost casual, but they hung in the air. The guards paused, exchanging confused glances. None had expected a human to speak with such calm confidence, especially one so small in stature. "What did you say?" the tall guard demanded, his patience thinning. Kale leaned back, resting his hands on the bar. I said, I serve drinks, not trouble. But everyone has limits. The aliens laughed, mocking, but a flicker of uncertainty passed through their eyes. The patrons noticed it too, a subtle tension in the room. Kyle's presence was more than human. There was a discipline in his posture, a sharpness in his gaze. Something about him seemed familiar, though no one could place it. One of the smaller guards, trying to assert himself, picked up a crate of rare alien liquor from the corner of the room. Maybe we should take this for ourselves, he said, shaking it slightly. The crate was heavy, the bottles fragile. Kyle's eyes narrowed slightly, tracking the guard's every move. Be careful with that, Kyle said softly. It could break. The guard laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Careful? Don't tell me what to do, human. As he shook the crate again, a bottle slipped, teetering on the edge. Kale moved a fraction of a second faster than the human eye could notice, placing a steadying hand on the crate. It did not make a sound. The guard froze, looking at Kyle in surprise, but before he could react, Kyle had already let go. Lucky, Kyle said quietly, returning to his glass cleaning. The patrons murmured amongst themselves. They had seen humans fight before, but this was something different. Kale moved with precision, grace, and control. There was a faint aura of power around him, subtle but undeniable. The tallest guard leaned forward again, red ridges glinting in the light. You think you're clever, human? Kale tilted his head slightly. I think everyone has a place, he said. And everyone has a choice. The guard laughed, dismissing the words. Your place is under my boot. Your choice is meaningless. Kyle's eyes hardened, just for a moment. Memories flickered in his mind. Distant worlds, battles long fought, enemies who had underestimated him, and the quiet discipline that had carried him through each fight. Those memories were a reminder of who he had been, a human warrior, once feared across the stars, now choosing peace. But even in peace, Kale could not allow injustice to stand. He stayed calm, letting the aliens' arrogance grow, their mockery, their confidence. They were tools now. Tools to measure him, to reveal their own weakness. The guards continued their mockery, grabbing chairs, bumping into tables, and laughing at the humans who dared not respond. Kale remained behind the bar, calm and composed, a silent storm waiting to break. One of the patrons, an elderly merchant, whispered to a friend, I remember hearing stories. Years ago there was a human, a warrior. They said he could take down fleets single-handedly. Kale's ears twitched at the words, but he said nothing. Rumors, stories, legends, they did not matter here. What mattered was the moment. And the moment was tense, charged, and ready to explode if the aliens pushed too far. As the guards continued their mockery, Kale's mind sharpened. He noted every movement, every shift of weight, every glance and hesitation. He remembered all the drills, the fights, the discipline that had once made him feared. And he waited. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but because patience was a weapon far stronger than brute force. The rusted star, quiet moments ago, was now a room on the edge of chaos. Patrons watched, holding their breath as the small human behind the bar remained unshaken, unafraid, and far more dangerous than anyone in that room realized. Kale Ryden was no longer just a bartender, and the alien guards had no idea that they had just walked into the presence of Earth's most feared warrior. The alien guards had not expected the human behind the bar to remain calm. Their laughter had turned into quiet murmurs among themselves, unsure now whether they were dealing with a timid bartender or something far more dangerous. Kyle Ryden did not smile, did not frown. He simply observed. Every movement of the guards, every twitch of a finger, every shift of their massive bodies, he memorized. "Tell me," the tallest guard said, leaning on the bar again, "how does it feel, human, to be so weak?" His voice was mocking, but there was a flicker of doubt hidden beneath the bravado. Kyle set down the glass he was cleaning and wiped his hands slowly, deliberately. "Weak?" he asked quietly. "Strength is not always visible. Sometimes it is hidden until it must be used." The words made the guards pause. One of them tilted his head, as though trying to understand what the human meant. "Hidden strength? You mean like fear?" Kale's eyes glinted. "No. Strength is knowing your limits and choosing how to act. Fear is only a tool when you let it guide you." The guards exchanged glances. Alien confidence often relied on size and intimidation, but this human's calm, measured words unsettled them. They had dealt with humans before, yes, but never one who did not panic, never one who did not try to fight back with reckless aggression. This human's silence was its own weapon. "You talk too much," the tallest guard said, stepping closer. "Words will not save you." Kyle did not respond. Instead, he moved behind the bar to retrieve a bottle of amber liquid, carefully lifting it from the shelf as though it were the most fragile object in the universe. The guard reached for it, but Kale's hand was faster. He poured a drink into a glass, the liquid catching the dim light like liquid fire, and placed it in front of the guard with precise calmness. The guard blinked. "What is this?" "A drink," Kale said simply. "For those who may need to calm themselves before making mistakes." The smaller guards chuckled, thinking it was a joke. But the tallest guard's eyes narrowed. There was something in Kale's gaze that told him this human was not ordinary. "Enough talk," the guard said. "I said your place is under me." He moved abruptly, trying to grab Kale by the shoulder, but Kale shifted his weight subtly, and the guard stumbled past him, nearly tripping over the bar's edge. The patrons gasped quietly. No human could have moved so fluidly, so silently. Kyle did not smile or celebrate. He simply returned to cleaning another glass, his calmness unshaken, his movements deliberate. A murmur ran through the tavern. The stories of Kale's past, long buried, began to echo in the minds of those who had heard rumors. "Could it be him?" whispered one patron. "Kale Ryden, the human warrior?" Kale heard the whisper, but did not acknowledge it. Rumors and stories did not define him. His past was a shadow, a reminder of what he once was, not what he had chosen to be. Yet every memory sharpened his instincts. The smallest guard, growing impatient, grabbed a chair and swung it toward Kale. It slammed against the bar with a loud crack. The patrons flinched. Kale stepped aside smoothly, the chair missing him by inches. He placed a hand on the counter and the chair fell to the ground unbroken, as if guided by an unseen force. The guard's eyes widened. "What? How did you—" Kyle did not answer. He simply continued moving with the precision of a master, his eyes scanning for the next potential threat. His mind raced, calculating every possible outcome. This was no longer a simple act of mockery. This was a test, and Kale did not fail tests. "You humans are strange," muttered the tallest guard. "Small, weak, yet so confident. You must have some secret." Kale tilted his head, considering the words. "No secret," he said softly. "Only understanding. Knowing who you are, knowing your limits, and choosing when to act." The guards laughed nervously, trying to mask their unease. One of the smaller guards, emboldened, reached for another crate of alien liquor. Kale's eyes followed every movement, every subtle motion. He could feel the weight of the guard's arrogance pressing into the room, but it was nothing he could not handle. "Careful with that," Kale said quietly. almost as if speaking to himself. The guard froze. Do you know what I'm holding?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. Kale nodded slowly. "Yes, and you should not break it." The room was silent for a moment. The patrons watched, wide-eyed. The air seemed charged, as though time itself had slowed. The guards were starting to realize that the human was no ordinary bartender. There was intelligence behind his calm demeanor, and a power that was hidden, yet palpable. "You think you are clever, human?" the tallest guard asked again, trying to regain control of the situation. Kyle's hands moved deliberately, as if in a dance only he knew. He adjusted a bottle on the shelf, wiped down the counter, and stepped back into the open. "Clever?" he asked softly. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply do not waste energy where it is not needed." The guards hesitated. This was not fear they felt exactly. It was respect, though unspoken, unacknowledged. They could not explain why, but the human's calm, measured actions made them uneasy. One of the patrons, an old alien trader with scales darkened by years in space, whispered to a friend, "I have heard the stories. Years ago, humans like him were feared across star systems. They said he could lead armies, defeat fleets, and survive battles that would break others." Kyle did not react outwardly. He continued cleaning glasses, moving with a rhythm that suggested both patience and readiness. But inside, memories of distant worlds, battles, and strategic victories sharpened his focus. He had left that life behind, yes, seeking peace, but the instincts remained, and instincts were never wrong. The tallest guard took a step closer, raising a clawed hand as if to strike. Kale's eyes locked onto his, calm and steady. "You will not find what you seek in anger," Kale said softly. "Patience, strategy. These are stronger than force alone." The guard laughed, but it was weaker this time, less certain. He glanced at his companions, who seemed equally unsettled. The human before them was small, unassuming, and yet there was an aura of discipline, of strength, that they could not deny. "You mock us," Kyle continued, his voice quiet but carrying weight. "Yet you do not see the danger in underestimating someone you do not understand." The words hit the guards like a sudden gust of wind. Confidence faltered. They had come to mock, to intimidate, to assert dominance. Instead, they found themselves facing something entirely different, a calm, collected presence that carried the quiet promise of power. The patrons whispered among themselves, glancing nervously at the guards and then at Kale. The small human behind the bar was no longer just a bartender. He was a storm waiting to break, a force unseen yet undeniable. One of the smaller guards, shaking with nervous energy, dropped the crate he had been holding. The bottles inside clinked but did not break. Kyle did not move. He had merely shifted his stance slightly, a subtle adjustment that had absorbed the impact. The tallest guard's eyes narrowed. "Enough," he growled. "We will not be humiliated by a human." Kyle did not flinch. He leaned on the bar slightly, his gaze steady. "Humiliation is yours to bear," he said softly. "But remember, every choice has consequences." The words were quiet, simple, yet they carried the weight of someone who had faced countless enemies and survived. The guards, for the first time, felt a flicker of uncertainty. Perhaps they had misjudged this human. Perhaps he was not what he seemed. Kale's calm, deliberate presence was a lesson in itself. He did not need to shout, to strike, or to threaten. His intelligence, patience, and quiet strength spoke louder than any weapon could. The Rusted Star was no longer just a tavern. It had become a stage for a subtle battle of wills, a contest between arrogance and discipline, between underestimation and true power. And Kale Ryden, human and former warrior, stood at its center, unshaken, ready for whatever might come next. The tavern was quiet now, but not peaceful. The alien guards exchanged nervous glances, their arrogance shaken. They had come expecting an easy target, a weak human to mock and intimidate. Instead, they faced calm, deliberate strength. Cale Ryden, the bartender, leaned against the counter, his dark eyes observing, calculating, waiting. "Enough games," the tallest guard growled. "Show us if you are truly nothing." Kyle tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "You will see," he said softly, almost like a whisper. The words carried no threat, only certainty. That certainty alone was unsettling. The smallest guard lunged first. He charged toward Cale, claws outstretched, intending to grab him and throw him against the bar. Cale moved almost imperceptibly. He sidestepped, guiding the alien past him. The guard stumbled, crashed into a shelf, and barely managed to regain his footing. Patrons gasped, some ducking instinctively. Cale's movements were smooth, precise, like water flowing around rocks. Every step, every gesture was measured. There was no panic, no wasted motion. The alien guards froze, unsure how to respond. Their confidence, built on size and intimidation, faltered under Kyle's calm efficiency. How did you?" One guard stammered, his voice trembling. Kyle did not answer. Instead, he shifted his stance slightly, his eyes flicking to the second guard. A flash of recognition passed through the alien's mind too late. This human was more than what he seemed. Cale moved forward, his motion barely noticeable, and delivered a swift, controlled strike. The guard lost balance, tripped over a fallen crate, and sprawled across the floor with a thud. Silence filled the room. Even the remaining guard hesitated. Kyle's calmness, combined with his lethal efficiency, had stunned them. Patrons whispered among themselves, eyes wide. "It can't be," one muttered. "Kyle Ryden. Could it really be him?" Kyle ignored the whispers. He had left that life behind, and yet the instincts never left. Every move, every decision was guided by discipline, strategy, and experience. This was not chaos. It was controlled action. The tallest guard roared in anger. "You dare!" he shouted, raising his clawed hand to strike. But Kyle was already moving. His reflexes were sharper than any alien could anticipate. In a smooth motion, Kyle shifted to the side, catching the guard's wrist mid-swing. The sheer force of his grip, combined with precise leverage, caused the alien to stumble forward, crashing into a table and sending drinks and utensils flying. The patrons ducked, some cheering quietly. The tavern, once a place of mockery, had transformed into a stage showcasing the quiet strength of humanity. Cale's movements were deliberate but so fast they were almost invisible. He did not strike for the sake of violence. He struck to control, to neutralize the threat with minimal effort. The remaining guard, terrified now, looked around desperately. "Stop him!" he shouted. But Cale did not give them time. His hands moved like shadows, disarming the guards one by one. Weapons clattered to the floor. Chairs tipped over. A bottle rolled across the ground, narrowly missing a patron's foot. Cale's face remained calm. There was no joy in what he did, no anger, only efficiency. Every motion was deliberate, calculated to stop the threat without unnecessary harm. Patrons watched in awe, unable to believe the quiet human behind the bar had become a force capable of controlling the situation so completely. "You think this proves anything?" the tallest guard growled, rising slowly. His voice was strained, almost shaking. "We are many. You are alone." Cale's eyes did not waver. "Numbers mean nothing when precision, strategy, and skill are applied," he said softly. "You assume power comes from size and strength. You are wrong." With a subtle movement, Cale shifted his weight, closing the distance between himself and the guard. He did not strike for harm. Instead, he used the alien's own momentum against him, guiding the clawed hand to knock him off balance. The guard stumbled into the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor, dazed and frustrated. The smaller guards, now completely disoriented, looked to the tallest guard for guidance. Their confidence had evaporated. Kyle did not pursue them aggressively. He let them regain some footing, but each step they took was monitored, calculated. He was in control, not through brute strength alone, but through a combination of calm, discipline, and intelligence. One of the patrons, a young merchant, whispered in awe, "I've heard the stories. The humans who fought across galaxies. Could this really be him?" Kyle heard the whisper, but did not respond. Legends were just that, stories. His focus was on the present moment, on neutralizing the threat without unnecessary destruction. The patrons began to realize the truth. Humans were underestimated not because they lacked strength, but because their strength was subtle, controlled, and often hidden. The tallest guard, finally regaining a sense of composure, tried to rally his companions. "Enough!" he barked. "He is only one human. We are many." Kale's eyes narrowed slightly. "Quantity does not defeat quality," he said quietly. "And underestimation is your greatest weakness." With that, he moved again. His strikes were precise, targeting joints, leverage points, and balance rather than causing injury. Each motion disarmed, neutralized, and controlled the threat. By the time the guards had realized what had happened, they were lying on the floor, frustrated, humiliated, and entirely defeated without serious injury. The tavern was silent. Patrons stared at Kale, awe written across their faces. Some whispered hurriedly to each other. "The bartender. He is more than human." Kale straightened, adjusting his tunic and wiping his hands. "Is everyone all right?" he asked calmly. "No harm should come to those who do not wish it?" The patrons nodded quickly, grateful and astonished. One alien, small and timid, stepped forward. You are amazing," he said softly. I never expected a human to be like this." Kyle offered a small smile. "Expect the unexpected," he replied. "Do not assume weakness based on appearance. Strength is not always obvious." The defeated guards scrambled to their feet, avoiding eye contact. Their arrogance had been broken, replaced by the uncomfortable awareness that humans were not as weak as they had assumed. Kyle did not gloat. He returned to his work, cleaning glasses and straightening bottles, his calm demeanor restored. Yet beneath that calm, his mind was alert. He knew this was only the beginning. Humility among the powerful was rare, and arrogance among the foolish could lead to future challenges. Kale's skills, though long set aside, were never forgotten. And this encounter had reminded him, and everyone in the tavern, that humans, underestimated as they were, could shape events with intelligence, precision, and courage. The Rusted Star, once a simple tavern in the lower sectors of Zephyr 9, had become a symbol. Patrons whispered of the human who had subdued the alien guards without a single serious blow. Word would spread, and with it, respect for humans would grow quietly in the galaxy. Kyle paused briefly, looking around the room. The patrons were safe. The guards were humbled. And he had reminded himself why, even in peace, he could never forget the skills that had once made him feared across star systems. A small voice spoke from a corner. You are Earth's legendary Kale Ryden, aren't you?" Kale's eyes flicked to the speaker, calm but unreadable. "I was," he said softly. "Now I am a bartender. That is all you need to know?" The young alien's eyes widened. But Kale's calmness left no room for further questions. The story of the human warrior would continue, but for now, He was just Kale, the bartender, serving drinks and maintaining order in a chaotic galaxy. Still, every patron in the tavern knew one thing: never underestimate a human. The rusted star had returned to its usual quiet hum. Patrons cautiously resumed their drinks, though whispers and glances toward Kale Ryden filled the air. The alien guards, now sitting stiffly at a table in the corner, kept their eyes averted. Their arrogance had been shattered, replaced by a mix of fear and curiosity. Kale moved behind the bar, polishing glasses with calm efficiency. He had not spoken much during the skirmish, and that silence seemed to amplify the awe in the room. Even those who had not witnessed the subtle precision of his strikes could feel the quiet authority he carried. Humans had long been underestimated in the galaxy, and this encounter would serve as yet another reminder of why that was a mistake. A young alien patron, timid and wide-eyed, stepped forward. I have heard stories," he stammered. "Humans like you, warriors. They say you fought across stars. Is it true?" Kale paused, his hands resting lightly on the counter. He could feel the weight of the question, the mixture of curiosity and respect in the alien's voice. He did not need to boast. Legends had a way of speaking for themselves. "Perhaps," he said quietly. "Stories are often exaggerations. What matters is the choices we make now, not the victories we have won in the past." The young alien's eyes widened. He had expected bravado, arrogance, or defiance. Instead, he found calm wisdom. Kale's voice, steady and measured, carried the weight of someone who had seen countless battles, survived unimaginable dangers, and understood the value of restraint. The elder alien merchant, who had witnessed Kale's actions firsthand, leaned toward a friend and whispered, "This human, he is more than he seems. I remember the stories, Kale Ryden. They said he was the most feared warrior Earth ever produced." Kale's ears twitched slightly at the mention of his name. Memories, long buried, flickered across his mind. He recalled distant battlefields, the roar of engines, the clash of forces, the strategies that had won entire wars. Those days were behind him now. He had chosen peace, anonymity, and a quiet life. Yet, the skills and discipline of that past remained, ready if ever needed. The defeated guards, sensing the conversation turning against them, attempted to assert themselves once more. "You humans, you think you are clever," the tallest guard growled. "We will return. Many more of us will come, and then you will see." Kyle interrupted, his voice calm but sharp. "Do not underestimate patience and intelligence. Numbers alone do not guarantee victory." The guard hesitated, unnerved by the certainty in Kale's words. The others shifted uncomfortably. Their earlier confidence had been shattered by a single human who did not rely on strength alone, but on strategy, discipline, and foresight. Kale continued, his tone quiet yet deliberate. "I am not here to fight today, but if pushed, I will act. And when I do, it will not be chaos. It will be precision. Control, not brute force, will decide the outcome." The tavern fell silent. Even the patrons, who had only wanted to enjoy their drinks, could sense the gravity in his words. Humans were often underestimated because their strength was not obvious. It was quiet, disciplined, and adaptable, traits that could outmatch raw power when combined with intelligence. One of the patrons, a young human trader, finally spoke up. "Kyle, why don't you tell them? About your past? About who you were?" Kyle's eyes flicked to the young human. There was no pride in his gaze, only calm reflection. "My past is not important here," he said. "The choices we make now define us, not what we once were." Yet, as the words left his mouth, Kale could not ignore the subtle shift in the room. Respect had replaced fear. Curiosity had replaced mockery, and whispers of his legendary skills began to spread like wildfire. The alien guards, for all their strength and arrogance, had learned a lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. A hush fell over the tavern as Cale straightened, moving to check the shelves. His hands moved with the practiced precision of a master, aligning bottles, cleaning glasses, and preparing drinks. Even these simple actions carried an air of discipline, a subtle reminder that he was someone who had been trained to perfection. The tallest guard finally spoke again, quieter this time, almost uncertainly. You are saying that humans are stronger than we imagined? Kyle turned to face him, calm and steady. Not just stronger, he said. Cleverer, resilient, adaptable, and patient. All the qualities that allow someone to survive and thrive, even when underestimated. The guard swallowed hard, realizing that his arrogance had blinded him. He had mocked, threatened, and underestimated a human who had, with minimal effort, neutralized their threat. The lesson was harsh but unforgettable. The young alien who had asked about Cale's past stepped forward again. But why live as a bartender? Why hide such power? Cale considered the question, his gaze distant for a moment. Memories of countless battles, of victories and losses flickered in his mind. Power is not a measure of worth, he said finally. Peace is. And strength without wisdom is meaningless. I chose a life where I could observe, protect, and guide quietly, without seeking glory. The past may define skills, but it does not define who I am today. The patrons absorbed his words. There was truth and humility in them, a lesson about strength, intelligence, and the value of restraint. Humans, they realized, were underestimated not because they lacked ability, but because their true strength lay in qualities that were often invisible: patience, strategy, and moral clarity. The alien guards, still recovering from their humiliation, had little to say. Their bravado had been broken, and they could not ignore the lesson in front of them. Respect, cautious and wary, began to replace arrogance. Cale moved to the bar, setting a clean glass before a patron. Do not assume weakness based on appearance, he said softly. Every being has potential. What matters is discipline, intelligence, and the choices we make when tested. The elder merchant nodded slowly, understanding the deeper truth. This human, he is teaching a lesson not just to those who mocked him, but to all of us. Strength is more than size and power. Cale smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. He had no desire for recognition or fame, yet the respect growing quietly in the tavern was a reminder that humanity's value, though often overlooked, was undeniable. Outside, the hum of the spaceport continued. Ships docked and departed, travelers hurried past, and the galaxy moved on. But inside the rusted star, a quiet shift had occurred. Patrons, alien and human alike, had witnessed something extraordinary, a human who had been underestimated, a man who had once been Earth's most feared warrior, demonstrating that true strength was as much about wisdom and restraint as it was about combat. Cale returned to his work behind the bar, pouring drinks, cleaning glasses, and straightening shelves. The patrons watched, whispers continuing, but now with awe rather than fear. Respect had replaced mockery, understanding had replaced prejudice, and a subtle shift in perception had begun to take root. The defeated alien guards finally rose, muttering among themselves. They left the tavern, not with anger, but with a cautious awareness of the human they had once mocked. Cale's actions had shown them that size, numbers, and aggression were not the only measures of power. Intelligence, patience, and discipline could overcome all of that, and humans, underestimated as they often were, could embody those qualities in ways that even advanced alien species struggled to match. Cale paused for a moment, looking out at the quiet spaceport beyond the rusted star's windows. He allowed himself a brief thought. The galaxy underestimated humans at its own peril. It was a lesson he had learned long ago, and one he would remind others of, subtly, quietly, whenever the opportunity arose. For now, Cale returned to his work, a bartender among many in a bustling station. Yet the aura of respect, the whispers of legends, and the subtle shift in perception around him were proof that humanity's true strength was quietly making itself known, even here, on a distant world. The Rusted Star had become more than a tavern. It had become a reminder, a symbol of what humans could achieve, not through arrogance or brute force, but through intelligence, restraint, and the quiet power of skill honed over a lifetime. Cale Ryden, former warrior and now humble bartender, served drinks with calm efficiency, aware that in the galaxy, humans were never truly weak. They were underestimated, yes, but underestimated humans were dangerous beyond imagination, and the galaxy slowly was beginning to remember that truth. The Rusted Star was quieter than usual. Word of Cale Ryden's calm mastery over the alien guards had spread quickly through Zephyr 9. Patrons whispered in awe, glancing at the human bartender with a mixture of respect and disbelief. Alien and human alike now regarded him differently. The arrogance of mockery had been replaced by an understanding. This human was extraordinary, and humanity itself was not to be underestimated. Kyle wiped down the counter slowly, his dark eyes scanning the tavern. Every movement, every gesture was deliberate, calm, and precise. He did not seek recognition, yet he understood the power of example. Humans often went unnoticed, underestimated by those who judged only by size, strength, or appearance. Yet in moments like these, true capability spoke louder than words. From the corner of the room, the defeated alien guards stirred uneasily. They had been humiliated before, but now their defeat carried a lesson heavier than pain. Humans were clever, adaptable, and disciplined. Their arrogance had been shattered, and they could not deny Cale's mastery. Slowly they rose, avoiding his gaze, and left the tavern. The patrons watched them go, a quiet sense of triumph filling the room. A young alien, trembling slightly, approached Cale. I am sorry for mocking you, he said softly. I did not know. Humans could be this capable. Cale's expression remained calm. Respect is earned, not demanded, he replied quietly. Do not judge strength by appearance or number. Intelligence, patience, and choice define true power. The young alien nodded, clearly processing the lesson. Around the room, other patrons whispered similar thoughts. Humans, underestimated for centuries, had proven themselves in ways subtle, quiet, and extraordinary. Cale had shown that courage, intelligence, and skill could outmatch brute strength and arrogance. As the patrons resumed their meals and drinks, a familiar murmur arose among the regulars. He is Cale Ryden, one human said quietly. The same who fought wars across the galaxy, Earth's most feared warrior. Cale's ears twitched slightly at the mention of his name. Memories of distant planets, battles fought, and enemies overcome flickered through his mind. He had left that life behind. He had chosen peace, anonymity, and simplicity. Yet those skills, honed over years, remained with him. And now, on this distant space station, they had served a different purpose, teaching respect and humility to those who had forgotten it. From the shadows of the tavern, the tallest alien guard peeked in, eyes wary. He had witnessed the aftermath, had seen the quiet strength and precision of Cale Ryden, and could not ignore the truth. Slowly, he stepped forward, lowering his gaze. We were wrong, he admitted. Humans, you are not weak. You are remarkable. Kyle nodded subtly. It is not about proving strength, he said quietly. It is about understanding it and using it wisely. The alien hesitated, clearly uncertain how to respond. Then, with a cautious bow, he left the tavern. Word of Kale's actions and humanity's subtle but undeniable power would spread through Zifor-9 and beyond. Humans, underestimated as they often were gaining a quiet respect in the galaxy. Kale returned to his work, pouring drinks and cleaning glasses. Patrons lingered, quietly observing, whispering about what they had seen. His calm presence, combined with the knowledge of his legendary past, created an aura of respect that went far beyond fear. Humans, they realized, were clever, adaptable, and disciplined. The underestimated human behind the bar had reminded everyone of that truth. A young human trader approached Kale, eyes wide. "Sir, you didn't need to fight them, did you? You could have—" Kale shook his head slightly. "Strength without control is meaningless. My goal was not to punish, but to teach, to show that humans are more than they appear, and to remind those who underestimate us that intelligence, patience, and strategy are as important as raw power." The young human nodded, absorbing the lesson. It was not just about fighting, it was about discipline, wisdom, and understanding. Humanity, underestimated as it often was, had qualities that could surprise even the most advanced alien civilizations. Outside, the spaceport hummed with activity. Ships docked and departed. Travelers rushed to and fro, and life continued. But the rusted star had become something more than a tavern. It was a beacon, a subtle reminder of what humans could achieve. In quiet ways, through intelligence, courage, and discipline, humans could shape events, influence outcomes, and earn respect across the stars. Kale paused for a moment, looking out at the stars visible through the station windows. His thoughts drifted to the distant past. Battles fought, victories won, enemies overcome. He had once been Earth's most feared warrior, a legend whispered about across worlds. Yet now he was simply a bartender. Yet even in this quiet life he had made an impact. His actions had reminded aliens and humans alike that humanity's true strength was often hidden, underestimated, but never absent. A new group of travelers entered the tavern, alien and human alike. Kale greeted them calmly, pouring drinks and offering small gestures of courtesy. The patrons, inspired by the recent events, watched with newfound respect. Some aliens approached him cautiously, curious about the human who had so effortlessly demonstrated skill, discipline, and wisdom. One of the aliens, a small trader, asked, "Could humans really be that capable across the galaxy?" Kale smiled faintly. "We are capable of much, yes, but often our true strength is hidden. It is shown only when needed, with purpose and restraint." The alien nodded, thoughtful. Around the room, others murmured in agreement. Humanity's underestimated qualities, discipline, intelligence, resilience, were now recognized quietly, subtly influencing how aliens perceived them. Later, as the tavern began to empty, Kyle cleaned the last few glasses, arranging them neatly. The patrons who remained whispered among themselves, speaking of the calm human who had faced arrogance, neutralized threats, and left a lasting impression. Kyle did not seek praise, did not crave recognition, yet the impact of his actions resonated through the room. The defeated alien guards, having left earlier, were now the topic of whispered discussions among travelers. Their arrogance had been humbled, their respect earned through quiet demonstration rather than overt violence. Humans, long underestimated, had proven that patience, intelligence, and discipline could outmatch raw strength and numbers. Kyle glanced around the tavern one last time, satisfied that the patrons were safe and that the lesson had been quietly delivered. He returned behind the bar, wiping down the counter and placing bottles carefully on the shelves. The quiet, disciplined human presence in a bustling alien spaceport had shifted perspectives. The galaxy had witnessed a reminder: humans were underestimated at their own peril. As Kale prepared to close the tavern for the night, he reflected quietly. Earth's warriors, clever and resilient, had long been capable of extraordinary feats. Yet humility, restraint, and wisdom were what allowed true strength to shine. The galaxy might forget the names, might underestimate humans again, but the qualities he had demonstrated, the discipline, patience, and intelligence, would leave lasting impressions. A final group of travelers lingered near the door. One young alien whispered to another, "That human, he is not just strong, he is wise and clever beyond measure. Humans, we may have judged them too harshly." Cale heard the words, though he said nothing. He simply returned to his work, calm and focused. A quiet reminder that humans were underestimated at their own risk. In the galaxy, where arrogance often ruled, intelligence and discipline were formidable weapons, sometimes more powerful than any fleet, any army, any weapon. The rusted star's lights dimmed slightly as night fell across Zephyr 9. Patrons departed, leaving Cale alone with the soft hum of the spaceport beyond the tavern walls. He poured himself a simple drink, his hands steady and deliberate. Humanity's quiet strength, long overlooked and underestimated, had been shown today, not in the chaos of war, but in the calm, precise actions of a single man. Cale Reedon, former warrior and now humble bartender, sipped his drink and gazed out at the stars. The galaxy had learned a lesson today. Never underestimate a human. And somewhere deep in the cosmos, the reputation of Earth's warriors continued to grow quietly, subtly, and with an enduring legacy the galaxy would remember.